Is Cooper Rush versus Daniel Jones the matchup we've all been waiting for? We'll talk about that and more today on Showdown Coverage, brought to you by SharpFootballAnalysis.com. I'm your host, Adam Wilde. We have the Dallas Cowboys heading to New York as 1-point underdogs against the New York Giants, and we'll be talking about the DraftKings slate today. So we're just going to go down the list by salary and just kind of talk about some of these plays, and then at the end we'll try to throw together a couple lineups and see what we like. So the theme of this slate is just going to be value for the Giants side of the ball. We have injuries to get Kadarius Toney. We have Kenny Galladay just not playing. And then we also have Wan'Dale Robinson likely to be out. So there's going to be a lot of ownership condensing around those cheaper Giants plays. But, I mean, it's probably worth it. You can jam in so many more plays on the Giant side of the ball, and you could stack Daniel Jones as opposed to Cooper Rush. So we'll start with Saquon Barkley. He's like the one fantasy darling, I guess, of the bunch. You could say CeeDee Lamb, but he hasn't really shown us much so far this season. So Saquon Barkley is the one that we're all going to be excited about. Probably worth it given the price tag, because if we're going to stack the Giants side of the ball, we're going to have plenty of salary. So Saquon Barkley, regardless of ownership, fine to jam him in the lineup. Next, we'll go down to CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb's a little pricey given his production so far, but his opportunity's been good. He's got 11 targets in both of the first two games. So he'll be targeted heavily with Cooper Rush. But the only problem is just how well he's produced on 22 targets thus far this year. Hasn't been great. At least hasn't been, the type of opportunity that we expected when people were drafting him as like 14th overall in redraft and best ball this year. So he's definitely been a bit of a letdown. The thing with CeeDee Lamb is that you're going to want to play him with Cooper Rush, and we've already determined. So once you go CeeDee Lamb, you're going to want to go Cooper Rush. Once you go Cooper Rush, you're probably going to want to play at least a couple more Cowboys. So now you're in a Cowboys onslaught, and that's just far more expensive for similar projection to the Giants. So it just leads you down that rabbit hole. Whereas if you avoid CeeDee Lamb and you play Sterling Shepard instead, Sterling Shepard is projected similarly to CeeDee Lamb, and now you're on the Giants side of the ball because then you're going to play Daniel Jones. So CeeDee Lamb's a fine play on his own if you want to play him as like the run back to a 5x1 by all means, or even a 4x2. But once you play him at captain, you're stuck stacking the Cowboys pretty much. I guess you could play CeeDee and Cooper Rush by themselves and then just run back Giants without Daniel Jones. We'll look at that at the end. Next, you've got Cooper Rush. We'll talk about Cooper Rush and Daniel Jones at the same time. So Cooper Rush has been viable. Last week he was fine. Efficiency was okay, but you're not going to get any ceiling out of Cooper Rush, and now he's priced up to 9,600. So if it's the difference between Cooper Rush and Daniel Jones, and the difference is 200, and Daniel Jones is cheaper, and all of Daniel Jones's options are cheaper, Daniel Jones also offering a rushing floor, then you probably just lean into Daniel Jones. I mean, you can play both. I forgot to mention the total was 39. So quarterbacks have a really easy time getting into the optimal lineup when it's low totals. I know that sounds weird, but once you get into the higher total games, then you have a lot of players scoring a lot of points, and it's easier to score points for non-quarterbacks. So it's easier for quarterbacks to get there on like 150 passing yards and a touchdown and like 20 rushing yards or something like that on a 39-point over-under. So good game for Daniel Jones. Sets up well for him. Should be low scoring. Should have some rushing upside, opportunity to rush in a touchdown, something like that. Cooper Rush is fine, but again, then you're just getting into the expensive Cowboys options that you kind of want to avoid. Next, we'll talk about Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard at the same time. This is exciting for people who have been playing Showdown for at least the last 2 years, how DraftKings has just refused to price Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard appropriately, and frustrating because Ezekiel Elliott is always the higher owned player, regardless of how much more expensive he is than Tony Pollard. So typically you would see Ezekiel Elliott in like the 9K range and Tony Pollard in the 6K range, and you would still get like 30 to 40% ownership on Elliott and 20% on Pollard. So it's just interesting and exciting to see them priced almost exactly the same so that we can have an interesting conversation about it. So Ezekiel Elliott has had more touches than Tony Pollard throughout the season, and he's had higher snap percentage, I think 65-35 basically last week, But Tony Pollard has been far more efficient, which has been the story of his whole career. And Tony Pollard is getting more opportunities in the passing game. So while Ezekiel Elliott is a fine play, he is heavily reliant on touchdown equity, which is not something that we want to bank on, especially in showdown. So you could play Ezekiel Elliott, but you're probably going to get an ownership discount on Pollard. He's a little bit cheaper, not that 200 ever matters in showdown. And he's probably going to catch more passes than Elliott. So between the two, I'm going to lean on Pollard, and Pollard's going to be the staple of my Giants onslaughts as my favorite bring back just ahead of Noah Brown. Next, we're going to have Sterling Shepard, who is operating as the de facto wide receiver 1 for the Giants. He's done well since coming back from injury, had a 10-target game and a 6-target game so far this season. Hasn't done a lot with it, but that's to be expected to come back from the injury. And then he's also more of a possession, short yardage guy anyways. So you're not going to expect a ton out of him, but the volume is going to be there. So Sterling Shepard is going to be someone that we're definitely going to want to stack with Daniel Jones. And then after we stack him with Daniel Jones, we can, discuss like if we want to do Richie James or Sills is another option, but Sterling Shepard's going to be that staple that you want to add to your Daniel Jones stacks. Next, we'll talk about Michael Gallup. He's questionable. However, we're expecting him to play. If the Cowboys were going to ever get a wide receiver to come in and give them some help, it would be this week. I mean, they're very thin. They can't really play Jalen Tolbert, so they kind of need Michael Gallup. So if he's ready to go, he needs to play. Question is, how much is he going to play? That's something that's going to come out probably tomorrow as I record on Sunday night. So you're just going to have to pay attention to that news. I'm expecting him to be on a pitch count, but that will come out tomorrow, hopefully. So either way, whether Gallup's on a pitch count or not, Noah Brown is a fantastic play. I like that he's been priced up to 6,800 because he's going to be less popular. But he is going to get you a lot of volume, and he's been one of Cooper Rush's favorite. I don't know if it's that backup role. Those two guys working together throughout the season, but it seems like Noah Brown has been one of the primary targets for Cooper Rush so far. And his snap share is still going to remain around north of 60%. Even with Gallup in, Noah Brown's still going to remain around north of 60, 65%. So I'm not too concerned whether Gallup is in or not. For Noah Brown, that is. Dalton Schultz, we're projecting out. If he's in 6,400, he's one of the best plays of the slate, but I'm not expecting him to be in. So he fits in as a great run back, better than Noah Brown, better than Tony Pollard if he's active at 6,400. Kenny Golladay, just take him off your board entirely. We have no clue what's going on there. He played He played exactly 2 snaps last week, so that's about $500,000 a snap for him. So that's incredible. And I guess I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. They just decided that he's not good enough to play football, even though their receiving core is decimated. So I can't explain it. It's one of the weirdest things that I've seen in fantasy football ever. But Kenny Golladay is not on the board for me if he's going to play. Even if he plays quadruple, even if he plays significantly more snaps, he's still under 50% snaps at 6,200. Not going to be a good option for us. We'll bring Richie James and David Sills together. So we've got James and Sills both in the 5K range. Sills played more snaps. Sills has had a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 more targets on the year. Richie James has been more steady in the NFL. Really weird to say for Richie James, but considering that Sills has had barely any live NFL action ever, you're looking at Richie James being the more productive of the two. And I mentioned this in the article you can find on sharpfootballanalysis.com that whenever I have a situation like this where 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs project very, very similarly and similar in price, I'll just pick the more expensive option under the assumption that they might be a little less owned. Daniel Bellinger is another one that we're just not going to play. He's just predominantly blocking. He's not getting basically any targets through 2 games. He's playing the highest snap percentage, but it's not turning into any viable fantasy production. We'll talk about a better option for Giants tight ends in just a moment. Kicker and defense all fine on this slate. That brings us down to the last play. Oh, Kadarius Toney, projecting him out. We mentioned that at the top. So he's 3,000. He would be a great play if he was going to be active, but we're not expecting that. Tanner Hudson's the last person that we want to get to. So Tanner Hudson's been the receiver at tight end for the Giants so far this year. Even though he's playing less snaps, he's had more receptions. I think he had 3 targets last week, 2 receptions. So that's plenty at 1,600. And if you want to get a cheap Giants player to put into your 4x2s or your 5x1s for the Giants side of the ball, then you probably want to put Hudson in there, and then you can fit Saquon at captain. You can fit an expensive Cowboys run back. So Tanner Hudson lets you do a lot, and he'll have a pretty easy time paying off that 1,600. Like I said, he's not the starting tight end, but he is the only receiving tight end. So he really should get at least 3 targets a game. All right, so that's going to bring us into building a couple lineups. Both are going to be Giants on slots. I maybe we'll look at Cowboys on slots, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for me this week. So we can start with Barkley at captain. And obviously that's going to be super expensive. So you're almost definitely going to want to put Hudson in there at that point too. So you got Barkley, Daniel Jones, Shepard. Let's go to Hudson. All right, so we've got Barkley at captain, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Tanner Hudson. You've got 6,800 left. And it looks like you can go a lot of ways with this, actually. If Schultz was playing, that would be fantastic. I mean, you would just do Schultz and Brown or something like that. But let's try Pollard. And then that leaves us choosing between Richie James or David Sills. I mentioned this in the article too. Typically, rule of thumb, if you play a running back at captain, then you probably don't want to play multiple pass catchers from the same team. You can play one. Or if you have a situation like tonight where you have Jeff Wilson and Debo both probably playing, a little bit of running back, then it's probably fine to have like Kittle and then Ayuk and then Debo and then Jeff Wilson. But typically you would want to avoid this sort of lineup. But since the Giants receivers are so cheap, it doesn't take as much for them to make value, end up in your optimal lineups. So with Richie James and Sills, it's like now you're going to have 3 pass catchers, but you're looking at Hudson at 1,600. Okay, he needs 3 receptions. What's that going to do to Barkley's ceiling? You have Richie James. Okay, he's going to go for 2 receptions for 60 yards. What's that do to Barkley's ceiling? Not much. Shepard is the one that you need to focus on affecting Barkley's ceiling. And so we have Shepard, and then we have 2 other cheap options here. So this is a little more salary than I typically like to use, but this gives you a good feel for the direction that you can go in. And then we'll just quickly swap Barkley and Jones and then see where we can go from there. It's good for 3 max too, if you can just kind of bounce between these guys in this way. So now you have 1,300, and you could probably just leave it like this, especially with Daniel Jones at captain. Now you're very comfortable with this lineup because, at quarterback at captain, play as many receivers as you can viably fit. That's the goal here. So Daniel Jones at captain, then you've got Barkley, Shepard, Hudson, Pollard, and Richie James, and then you could just mix and match all over the place with this. One thing that you could probably do is take Pollard out and see what you get to there. So you're still looking at Elliott, but honestly, if you're playing 3 max, you could run this lineup and then just switch your 3 Cowboys run backs. So you could do one with Elliott, one with Pollard, one with Noah Brown. If Schultz is active, you could do one with Schultz active. So there's definitely ways that you can just manipulate this 5x1 build that I have in front of you right here. So you could just play Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, Tanner Hudson, Richie James, rotate through some Cowboys. And the last thing we'll do is just try to hit on I haven't even tried to build a Cowboys lineup, so let's see what we could do here. Let's just start with Lamb at captain. You probably want to play Barkley in every lineup. Then you're going to have Rush. So now you're left at, it gets tough already. So Lamb, Barkley, Rush, and now you're stuck at 4,400. Probably just throw Tanner Hudson in. He's going to be great salary relief just to get us back into some contention. But now you're in a range where you don't have any options to stack Cooper Rush with right now. You really need to go Pollard here, and that leaves you at 3,500. 3,500 is just under. So let's try changing Rush and Lamb and seeing if we can get to a kicker or a defense. We're going to put Rush in at captain, put CeeDee Lamb in the flex. Of this 38 gets you to the Giants defense, and that's all your salary. So you just I don't feel great about stacking the Cowboys side of the ball. They all project okay in and of themselves, but when you start putting them together and you see how much that salary gets eaten away, and then you don't even get to play Sterling Shepard here, which is that's a huge bummer when Sterling Shepard is what do we have him 7600 and CeeDee Lamb is 10,200, and they're projected about the same. So it just you could play a Cowboys lineup and just not play CeeDee Lamb. Certainly viable. Also, CeeDee Lamb will have plenty of ownership, but it's just going to be tough. Not saying that you can't do it. Cooper Rush has gotten there. My biggest winning slate ever was last year where Cooper Rush was playing against the Vikings. So I personally know that he can get it done. But just given pricing, given the injuries on the Giants side of the ball, that is the direction that I'll be going. So please help us grow this channel. Like, subscribe, rate, review. Head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and check out the work that we've got going on over there. That's going to do it for today. Good luck on the slate, and I will catch you all next time.